Chairman Furman, welcome. Both Vice Chair Klobuchar and I appreciate your willingness to reschedule this hearing, and I'm hopeful that you'll resume the longstanding practice of the Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors testifying before the JEC about the economic report of the President immediately after its release. Welcome today. We are all pulling for a strong recovery. Too many Americans of all ages and all races have simply given up hope of finding a full-time job. Now, 4 full years after the recession ended, while some parts of the nation are making progress, the current recovery remains the weakest among all post-1960 recoveries in every major measure of economic performance, generating a troubling and, we think, dangerous growth gap. While real GDP has grown by 10% since the recession ended, that's just barely above 1/2 the growth in average recoveries over the same period, producing a growth gap of $1.3 trillion in the economy. For families, the growth gap hits home. Real disposable income per capita has increased by a mere 3.7%. That's less than 1/3 of the 11.7% average. This means a family of 4 has $11,420 less in real after-tax income to spend that they would have had if this recovery had merely been average. And the current recovery has produced 4.4 million fewer private payroll jobs since the cyclical low than an average recovery. An important gauge of America's jobs picture is the employment to population ratio that measures the proportion of the country's population aged 16 or over that's employed. By now, it would have risen by 1.5 percentage points in an average recovery, more than double that in a Reagan recovery. But today, America's employment to population ratio has actually declined by 1.1 percentage points. And to put the stalled labor market in perspective, in October of 2013, the employment to population ratio was only 0.06 of a percentage point higher than the lowest reading during the President's administration. In October, the labor force participation rate fell, as you know, to 62.8%, a low not seen since the Carter administration. And as many unemployed Americans are learning the hard way, the decline in the official unemployment rate to 7.3% is largely illusory because so many Americans have simply given up looking for work. If the labor force participation rate had not declined since the President took office, the unemployment rate would be a whopping 11.3% today. As President John Adams observed, facts are stubborn things, and facts prove that this is the weakest recovery since 1960, indeed since World War II. On July 24th, President Obama described a growing middle class as the engine of our prosperity. He was exactly right. In this recovery, however, middle-class Americans continue to suffer while Wall Street has roared. Since the recession ended, the S&P 500 total return index is up by more than 86%, while real disposable income per capita is up a mere 3.7%. To make matters worse, as of this past July, 15.7 million more Americans were receiving food stamps, while only 2.1 million more Americans were employed. Adding 8 Americans to food stamps for every one finding work is not growing the middle class. In fact, the recovery might better be described as a real war on the middle class. Today, we want to discuss the economic report of the President, the roadblocks to job creation and economic growth, and search for bipartisan solutions to restore prosperity to the suffering middle class. Clearly, Main Street is being harmed by the President's higher taxes, mountains of new red tape on local businesses, and the disastrous rollout of the ill-named Affordable Care Act that's cutting workers' hours, raising their health care costs, preventing small businesses from hiring, and canceling health insurance for millions of Americans. Both parties agree that Americans deserve better. Chairman Furman, we look forward to your testimony. With that, I recognize Vice Chair Klobuchar.